Here's what happens, okay? I'll give you all the details that I know so far. This person, he's a white supremacist. He wrote in his manifesto that I did read the manifesto. He wrote in his manifesto, I read parts of it at least. It's pretty cookie cutter white supremacist bullshit. Talks about how he got radicalized on 4chan. Talks about how he basically became like a white supremacist who believes in white genocide. I mean, this dude was like extremely online, obviously in the worst way possible. He was planning this for months, and everything he's talking about is like, again, cookie cutter Republican propaganda, cranked up to the 90s, okay? Just what you hear on Tucker Carlson, but not as restricted as Tucker Carlson is, but just completely unhinged on the internet and on 4chan, which the shooter mentions in his manifesto, like I said. Basically, what ends up happening after the manifesto was released on Discord is that like he invites a group of people into his Discord, blasts it on 4chan too, as well as these guys usually do, puts his manifesto out there, basically starts his live stream. He was basically driving for a couple minutes, got to the top supermarket in Buffalo after, for the record, driving for 4 fucking hours across the state, specifically to go to an area where he could find the most amount of black people. That was his point. I assume there was like around 20 plus people watching at the time, the stream. And I think that once someone clearly reported it to Twitch, and Twitch took down the stream fairly quickly. I think it's like the moment from him driving up and like finally getting to the supermarket all the way to starting the violence. It's like a 1 minute and 20-second video that was pretty quickly and pretty efficiently taken down by Twitch. In comparison to some other platforms and the way that they moderate, I mean, I think they did a decent job. Like, they have no way of knowing what random verified account is going to do an act of fucking white supremacist violence, obviously. But I know he had the N-word. Yes, the shooter had the N-word and also the number 14 written on his AR-15. Even the fucking police department, which is, oftentimes known for doing unjustifiable acts of white supremacist violence, specifically on black communities, even that fucking police department basically said, yeah, this is a hate crime. There are more details coming out about like this dude possibly being red flagged ahead of time. But if you look at his manifesto, if you look at the things that he says, if you look at the actions that took place, this is not a lone wolf. People use the term lone wolf because he acted alone, but this is yet another act of stochastic terrorism. What is stochastic terrorism? Stochastic terror is when people are activated on the internet or through, I'll just give you the full-blown definition. The term stochastic terror is initially used to suggest that a quantifiable relationship may exist between seemingly random acts of terror and their intended goal of perpetuating a reign of fear via a manipulation of mass media and its capacity for instant global news communication. Basically, what stochastic terrorism is the incitement of a violent act, oftentimes seemingly backed by white supremacist ideology, that radicalizes groups of people into acting. ISIS does this very effectively as well, but no one is as effective as engaging people in acts of stochastic terror than the white supremacists on the internet. The manifesto did not mention, I don't think, Fox News or Tucker Carlson specifically, but he did mention Great Replacement regularly. And what people need to understand is that Tucker Carlson usually is the first step towards that level of radicalization, or simply just a reinforcement of said ideas. He's also, for older people who already have like incredibly racist opinions that could be very similar or aligned with white supremacist ideas, that don't realize that they have like similar opinions to fucking white nationalists and whatnot. It's just like, your old grandfather or your uncle or whatever the fuck is listening to Tucker Carlson and has very similar opinions to Tucker Carlson, doesn't realize that it's just like basically polite white nationalist propaganda. That's why famous ex-Nazi Derek Black routinely talks about, life after hate, a campaign for de-radicalizing Nazis, and would, back in the day when he was a Nazi, would go to Republican conferences and educate other Nazis specifically on how to infiltrate conservative movements and the Republican Party elections, because of how they have unified goals ultimately. Their goals are completely aligned with one another, because the Republican Party also uses white resentment and racial agitative propaganda to galvanize their base of support. I mean, ex-white nationalists have said Tucker Carlson hits far-right messaging better than they have, and also Stormfront and all of these other places where Nazis gather. They love Tucker Carlson. They find him to be, they say he is our guy. Tucker Carlson's numerous rants are nearly identical. Numerous rants on the Great Replacement are, of course, nearly identical to what the manifesto said. He did not die. He killed 10 people, including the security officer there. So whenever someone says, like, where was a good guy with a gun? There was a good guy with a gun there. He actually ended up, he was an ex-police officer working security. He had a gun. He shot the white supremacist terrorist. He got shot, but he had body armor on and continued shooting people, and also ended up killing the security guard as well. The shooter specifically said he was not interested in killing white people, even though he did strike some white people. In the video, you can see him running up to a white person, says, "Oh no, please don't." And the shooter apologizes to him before moving on. He did end up still killing, I think, a couple white people, but he literally does turn around and apologize to one fucking guy. I don't know why, but like he literally says sorry. And do not seek the video. It's not good for anything. From what I understand, yes, the local police had brought him in the past when he threatened a high school shooting. This is there's a couple things that we do know so far. As he has said in his manifesto, he's driving to the top supermarket in the area that he's going to because it's the highest percentage of black people he can find, similar to the El Paso white supremacist shooter that went to the El Paso Walmart specifically looking for undocumented immigrants or Mexicans. There's one place where there's a white dude on the ground, says please don't, and he apologizes for moving on to someone else, says sorry, and then he doesn't shoot him and then moves on to someone else. So after that he walks outside, cops are there, cops are on scene, takes his helmet off, he puts a gun to his neck, according to eyewitnesses in the area, threatening to basically kill himself, but then can't do it, and the cops apprehend him. So that is that's summarization of events. Some of the victims one of the victims was 77 years old, like Pearlie Young, killed in Buffalo, shopping for groceries for 25 years. She ran a pantry where every Saturday she fed people in Central Park. Every Saturday she loved singing, dancing, being with family. The mother, grandma, and a missionary. I mean, there's a multitude of different reasons as to why this happened. Okay, America has a million different problems. It's a powder keg. Racial agitation is utilized by, of course, most notably from the right to divide the American working class and try to make it seem as though, to try to win favors with agitated people in the conservative side that are angry at the system. But it's a very successful way to redirect that anger towards some of the more marginalized people in society. But the reason why we talk about this as an act of stochastic terror is because it corresponds to pre-existing white supremacist attitudes. It's not new. This isn't new. If you've ever watched a Fox News program, you already fucking know this is how it works. They say the 14 words as much as possible every single night. Racial agitation is a very successful method to galvanize the base of Republican support. The Republican Party's propaganda outlet Fox News, which was created with the express purpose of doing propaganda and also dictating what the Republican Party's agenda looks like by a Republican Party loyalist and also a Republican Party worked for many, many years with the Republican Party and continued to do so and created Fox News with the express purpose of doing that, will reinforce that exact same message and normalize it. And you can also see it in every facet on the internet, going from even, like I said, defending nationalism, defending white supremacist attitudes as best as possible, and also doing the exact same repeat of fascist propaganda, such as the Jews are responsible for undocumented people coming to this country, or Soros is responsible. Instead of Nazis say Jews are responsible for degenerating Western culture. The exact same thing that fascists used to say back in the day. They called it cultural Bolshevism. But now the versions of that you see, the newer whitewashed versions of that you see that are more palatable for an otherwise liberal audience is basically saying cultural Marxism. Jordan Peterson repeats this a lot, and you hear this all the time from other people. Cultural Marxism is the exact same thing as cultural Bolshevism. It's just basically a new coat of paint on that same shit. Okay. And the idea is that Jews, or if you're Fox News, you say the Democrats or them specifically, or sometimes they'll name like one Jewish person like George Soros, are responsible for the unfettered, unchecked immigration that is flowing into this country from black and brown communities, black and brown countries. It is always a way to deflect away from examining the material realities and why such actual consensual immigration occurs and refugees come into this country, like why that's happening, what's going on in their own personal countries, what is our personal culpability as a dominant nation, the hegemonic global power, in destroying the material conditions of these nations that haven't been able to recover from colonial violence, slavery, and the like, and continued extraction of natural resources under the boot of imperialist agitation and violence once again. Basically, instead of addressing those realities, the reactionaries on Fox News will say they're just coming here because people are paying them to come here, because they're jealous. They're coming here to destroy our culture, and not because they have no opportunities because we've shut them out of participating in the global marketplace in meaningful ways, and that it's actually somehow bad. I mean, it goes all the way to Donald Trump saying, Mexicans are rapists and they're not sending their best. The implication that someone out there is sending people, that immigration is actually somehow an act of violence. And like I said, there's numerous different layers to this kind of propaganda, but it's normalized through every facet of our being, through every facet of our existence. So, and at the edge of that, you have the edgelords at 4chan who are basically repeating the exact same thing their grandfathers are, but they think it's a little bit different because they're going mask off and they're so based and red-pilled. But it's the same bullshit. You're not edgy. You don't have any new ideas. You're literally just desperately repeating your grandfather's agenda. White genocide is bullshit. I will, of course, also talk about whiteness as a concept. I will, of course, talk about what whiteness is, because that's where it starts and begins. I will give you a brief historical background on what that is and what that means for power and why it's bullshit, and how that corresponds to the violence that we see on a daily basis. The shooting in Buffalo was quite literally terrorism. Yes, it was a perfect representation of stochastic terrorism. So the 18-year-old who shot and killed 10 people at the Buffalo supermarket had researched the local demographics while looking for places of high concentration of black residents, for the record. That's why he chose Buffalo, the supermarket that he chose, the neighborhood that he chose. Arriving there at least a day in advance to conduct reconnaissance, law enforcement officials said Sunday. Authorities said the gunman shot in total 11 black people and 2 white people on Saturday in a rampage motivated by racial hatred that he broadcasted live. And he was identified as patron Gendron, had previously threatened a shooting at his high school last June, a law enforcement official told the Associated Press. Buffalo Police Commissioner Joseph Gramaglia said the then 17-year-old was brought in for a mental health evaluation afterwards. Meanwhile, federal authorities were still working to confirm the authenticity of a racist 180-page manifesto that detailed the plot and identified Gendron by name as the gunman, the law enforcement told AP. But the shooting, latest act of mass violence in a country unsettled by racial tensions, gun violence, and a recent spate of hate crimes, left local residents shattered. It also prompted New York government Kathy Hochul, a Buffalo native, to demand the technology industry take responsibility in its role for propagating hate speech. Hochul told ABC that the heads of tech companies need to be held accountable and assure all of us that they're taking every step humanly possible to be able to monitor this information. How these depraved ideas are fermenting on social media, it's spreading like a virus, she said Sunday, adding that a lack of oversight could lead to others to emulate the shooter. Twitch said in a statement that it ended Gendron's transmission less than 2 minutes after the violence started. Screenshots purporting to be live from the Twitch broadcast appear to show racial epithets scrawled on the rifle in the attack, including the number 14, a likely reference to the white supremacist slogan. Now, Kathy Hochul, who is the governor of New York, of course, is going to look for anything and everything she can say. Obviously, there is something to be said about radicalization that occurs on the internet, but you can't radicalize comfortable people, okay? It's not as easy to radicalize comfortable people that are not suffering, okay? You cannot radicalize people who are not victims to their material circumstances as easily as you can someone who is fucked up, whether it's because they don't have access to adequate mental health care in this country, which is dog shit, in many countries is dog shit, or more importantly than just the radicalization that occurs, you can't really radicalize people in the opposing, in opposition to the pre-existing dominant hegemonic attitudes that are white supremacist, okay? That's the fucking point. That's the like, he talks about how he's radicalized by 4chan in his manifesto, how he was able to reach out to white supremacists who red-pilled him and made him into a based edgelord, right? And for the record, if you want to understand white supremacy in this country, look to the most popular news broadcast. Here it is. Breaking news, 10 people dead in the Buffalo supermarket attack police call hate crime. Meanwhile, this is what's going on Fox News. So recognize that as well, okay? How could this have happened? Gunman who killed 10 in Buffalo supermarket attack was on authorities' radar. This is something that we've heard from the news media. The suspect surrendered to the police on Saturday, as we know, what authorities are calling a racially motivated violent extremism attack. He apparently publicized a racist manifesto on the internet. We read through pieces of it yesterday. 11 people struck by gunfire were black and 2 were white, but in the video of the shooting, you see him literally apologize to a white person who's terrified on the ground. He straight up says, "I'm sorry," and doesn't kill him or doesn't shoot him and moves beyond it. Gramaglia told reporters that Gendron had been taken into custody given a mental evaluation over a day and a half last June, but was released. While he did not provide additional details, New York State Police said in a statement on Sunday that they had been called to a high school in Gendron's hometown in Conklin, New York, near the Pennsylvania border, on June 8th, 2021, in response to a 17-year-old student making a threatening statement. This was 1 year after his radicalization on 4chan. 2020, some of you came here, you were fucking bored and directionless in your lives, and you started watching me. This man went into 4chan and went in the opposite direction and became radicalized by his own words, by the way, over the course of that year, and became a white supremacist. Without identifying Gendron, police said the student was taken into custody and given a mental health evaluation at a hospital. He was not charged criminally. New York Governor Kathy Hochul said ABC Sunday, it's the advertises views online on authorities' radar. I want to know what people knew and when they knew it. But of course, in the aftermath of YSL being considered a gang, and in the aftermath of the RICO case launched against Young Thug, Gunna, and numerous other people in Atlanta and in Georgia, a question on everybody's minds was, why is there never a RICO charge for a racketeering case for the KKK? And that's because how the fuck are you going to investigate yourselves, authorities? White supremacist acts of violence is routine and commonplace when the state does it. It's normalized when the state does it. Okay, it's the norm. It's supposed to happen, right? And that's precisely why when you see acts of white supremacist violence manifesting in a country where we supposedly are monitoring every kind of thing that people do, the FBI is monitoring everyone, and the NSA is monitoring everyone all the time, we simply cannot figure out real acts of white supremacist terror. We can only fucking urge people and activate them to engage in an act of white supremacist terror that we stop beforehand. We apprehend them immediately so that we can celebrate how good we were at stopping said act of white supremacist violence, like activating the 3%ers in Michigan to go and kidnap the governor. But of course, in that circumstance, famously, as I called out again, because this is, I'm unbiased in this situation and I have no love for the federal government. I have no love for the FBI. They will do exactly what they did to the Muslim teenagers that were mentally ill on the internet and urge people to go and basically plan out a game, a terror attack and a kidnapping attack so that they can engage in entrapment and give themselves a dub. What do you mean by 3%ers? Jen, 3%ers and Oath Keepers are a white anti-government militia. That's why 4chan is in unison claiming that this is an act of glowies, that the feds activated this person or some shit like that. No. I don't think the feds had to do too much in this circumstance, considering that there is plenty of motivation for, mentally ill people. That doesn't mean mental illness is the reason why people are doing this. There are plenty of fucking people with mental health issues, I myself included, and most of the people in this chat included, that don't engage in such acts of insane violence. But it's a country full of people that are alienated, angry, resentful, a country that has a history of white supremacist violence, a country that was built upon white supremacist subjugation, not coming to terms with said history, and instead using that anger and resentment as a political motivator for the Republican Party especially, and reinforcing that attitude through all of our fucking facets of entertainment and information, and normalizing that attitude, sanitizing it as best as possible. Put that into unaddressed mental health issues, lack of adequate mental health care, and also a country where there are more guns than there are people, and they're readily available, and you have the powder keg that is in front of us. It is not an accident that America, with respect to comparable OECD nations, has the highest rate of gun violence. Fixing this issue is multifaceted and very difficult. And because of how powerless we feel in fixing this issue, and because our legislators are also aware of how powerless we are in fixing this issue, and because of a lack of motivation from our legislators to fix this at all, and because of the disjointed and undemocratic way that our systems are created, whether it be the Senate or whether it be gerrymandering in Congress or state legislatures that make it virtually impossible to actually actually enact any sort of democratic protocol and have the willingness and the wishes of the people demonstrated through any facet of power, we strike at what we can. And what we can is, like I said, getting Big Mouth to change one of the black characters to be voiced by a black voice actor instead. And there's nothing wrong with that, but that's not progress. I'm just using that as a simple example. We do that by getting Walmart to throw up the throw out the BLM fist. You know, Black Lives Matter. And then we think we did it. We finally made some changes. Well, no changes are coming, and things are only getting worse. Yeah, Aunt Jemima is no longer, a black figure. We did it. At its most nefarious, that kind of symbolic progress is basically a commodification of actual social justice movements and causes. Okay, that's at its worst. And at its best, it's simply corporations that are trying to do their very best as they can without actually working towards solving the underlying material problems and actually continuing to support those said systems because it benefits them. The Buffalo shooter, I mean, I don't know how fucking correct the Daily Mail is, but dude, please look at this. This in and of itself is exactly the Zach Fox meme, dude. Holy shit. I mean, this is literally Zach Fox's very own certified fucking classic meme on Twitter. I don't know if he still has a fucking Twitter or not. That's crazy. Every time a white person be like a fucking doing an act of terror, okay? And this is how the fucking media, dude, look at this. This is how photos be looking at headlines when a white family kills his entire family. A white man kills his entire family. Like straight up. Every time. It's crazy. Yeah, what a sweet family. Hope nothing bad happened. Every goddamn time. Buffalo shooter was investigated after threatening school shooting last year, but still legally bought 3 guns. Nice, dude. Once again, pointing this out and ending it at the hypocrisy seeking is, again, just a reinforcement of our powerlessness. What you need to recognize in this circumstance is not simply the hypocrisy of Daily Mail, which is a fucking right-wing dish rag anyway, but instead understand that this plays a role in manufacturing consent and plays a role in reinforcing the attitude that people have about white shooters versus black victims of police brutality. It is just another way to reinforce the white supremacist hegemonic attitude in the media. Last year, one former student recalled Gendron wore hazmat school to school for a week. She believed it had something to do with protecting himself from the coronavirus, but she didn't rule out the fact that he was making a joke. It was the most extra thing I've ever saw him do. Former classmate who was asked not to be named said there were other indications of Gendron's fragile mental state during a class exercise in political class in which the students created their own countries with the government of their choice. Gendron's pick was an autocratic regime that the classmate described as Hitler-esque. His views were extreme, the students say. You could pick any form of government that you wanted, and he picked a totalitarian government. Like, he's from like a nice, from what I understand, by the way, as far as I've seen, he's from like a relatively well-off, nice family too. So just remember that as well. The classmate recalled that he almost collided with her head in his car, but she brushed it off at the time of careless driving. He was definitely into video games, shooter games. It's so mind-blowing to think that it could have been us, she said. We know that he was like a big Rust fan. He played a lot of Rust. I know he had this manifesto, but what if he decided to do a test run on us? For the most part, he was quiet, but she said he would smile weirdly when he spoke to people. She says she didn't remember him ever having a girlfriend. Obviously, video games are not to blame here, for the record. It's just another indication that you see like that isolation, okay? The isolation that a lot of these people experience on the fucking internet. For the most part, he was quiet. Gendron is one of 4 boys born to Paul and Pamela Gendron, 2 civil engineers with the state who live in Conklin, New York, 3.5 hours south of Buffalo. Paul coached his kids in the town's soccer league, and at least one neighbor found him strange. His mother appeared conceited, locals said. He's from this pristine family, a schoolmate said. They have everything together. They were just perfect. In photos posted by his mother on Facebook, Peyton Gendron appears to tower over his father and others. He was 6'1" or 6'2". He was a big guy. Family appears to be a tight-knit suburban family that played laser tag together, went to autumn festivals, the beach, and dined together in restaurants. That's great. That's so nice. How wonderful and kind. He grew up with a lifetime of privilege. Neighbors said they were cold. To be honest, the mother was kind of snooty. A local parent who asked not to be named said, like, she was better than everybody else. The father was strange. Like, when you meet someone, they just seem off. A neighbor recalled him bringing home a human-sized brontosaurus that he built for a school project. School records show that he was a good student, made high honors his senior year, scoring higher than 92% in all of his classes. Facebook photos show that Gendron went to a few college tours and spent some time enrolled in Broome County Community College. A college spokesman told the Buffalo News he was no longer enrolled. They have a really nice family, neighbor Nancy Santucci said. They seem like regular people. In a million years, I never would have think that anyone in this neighborhood would drive the Buffalo to carry out a racially motivated shooting. Funny how it's not a terrorist, he's a white supremacist. No, white supremacy is terror. I think like part of the reason why it's good good to see this background in the situation is not just to sanitize the actions of the shooter itself, but also to show you that, or at least the reason why I'm going through this is because I want to show you that, like, you know, it's not as simple as like, oh, this dude fucking developed this kind of attitude or one day he snapped. It can happen too. Alienation and isolation can happen in every family. It can happen in all different walks of life, in all kinds of circumstances. Privileged people get into this shit as well. So just remember that it's not like, you know, it's not always just like mean-spirited individuals. And they can be polite to your face as well, as I've talked about. Sure, the parents were hella conservative though, which this article is probably not mentioning. Anyway, in the screed, he said he was radicalized by 4chan, the same online chat group that launched QAnon. He claims that the critical race theory is a Jewish plot to undermine white, which he argues is a reason to kill Jews. He also refers to other mass shootings carried out by further racist ideology like Dylan Roof, killed 9 people in a black church in South Carolina, and New Zealand lunatic Brendan Tarrant, who murdered 51 people in a mosque. Gendred also espoused the Great Replacement Theory, which claims Democrats are deliberately importing illegal migrants into the U.S. wholesale to achieve electoral dominance while driving whites to extinction. On Saturday night, Gendron, who was barefoot, masked, and wearing a paper smock, told the judge that he understood the charges against him and was not guilty at an arraignment Saturday evening. We have taken the necessary steps to get him behind bars. That was justice, getting that first murder charge filed immediately. The DA said that they were working with federal authorities to bring further terrorism, hate crime, and murder charges. He made no other comment, and Gendron's lawyer confirmed he planned to plead not guilty to the killings. Conklin has since been pictured on social media profiles. Yeah, 3 gunshot victims are being treated for injuries. The cops say 11 of the people he shot were black, and he live streamed the assault. He exited his vehicle. He was heavily armed. He had tactical gear. He had a tactical helmet on. He had a camera that he was live streaming what he was doing, the police commissioner said at a news conference. This was the retired police department, retired ex-cop Aaron Salter, who apparently went back, become a security person at the supermarket out of boredom in retirement. He actually shot the dude. He actually shot the fucking terrorist piece of shit. But because he had body armor, unfortunately, the piece of shit had body armor. Nothing happened to him, and then he turned around and killed him. Ruth Whitfield, the 86-year-old mother of retired Buffalo Fire Commissioner Garnell W. Whitfield, was also killed during the shooting spree. My mom was a consummate mom. Was a mother to the motherless. She was a blessing to all of us. She loved God and taught us to do the same thing. The former fire commissioner told Buffalo News. So yeah, and that's where we're at. Senseless violence and bloodshed. Another day in America. Can you address him self-identifying as auth left? Every conservative is hiding behind it. No, it's bullshit. He fucking said that he was a communist, but then he believes in like creating a fucking white utopia. There's nothing more like Republican and conservative than that. Anyone who tries to fucking turn around and try to make it seem like this dude was literally a fucking leftist is a psychopath, okay? He said he used to be a communist when he was 12 years old. The idea that like he was on PCM, political compass memes, is already a fucking self-report to begin with. Yeah, it's the same energy as like Republicans claiming in the most awful way possible that like National Socialism means that the Nazis were actually left-wing, while also simultaneously supporting every horrifying idea that the Nazis actually believed in. Republicans love saying that it was the socialism that the Nazis actually advocated for that was violent and not the nationalism. That's similar to actually thinking that North Korea is a republic. Yeah, it's like saying North Korea is a democratic people's republic because they say they're democratic in the fucking name. DCM mods say he only commented base, but he commented that on a post about Jews being evil. Yeah, that's surprising that he was on Reddit with the same username that he was on Twitch on, and he was on all of the fucking same forums that I tell you are dog shit, all the same subreddits that and, you know, just the worst kind of fucking weirdo, okay? So many people are looking for a sense of community on the internet, and unfortunately, Nazis are very good at creating that sense of community, especially because they do not have to work against the pre-established norms. They can literally just further the comfort that you feel that everything that you've been socially conditioned into believing is actually good and normal, okay? There's a sense of comfort in not trying to unlearn your biased preconceived notions, okay? There's a sense of comfort that comes out of that. That's the reason why people seek out like any matter of transphobic material they can to justify that like, no, the way that they understand the world is actually correct. And it is good to be transphobic and normal to be transphobic, and everyone is abnormal. Like trans people are not normal. That's the attitude that they seek out. And there's plenty of that information readily available on the internet. And it's the same as fucking white supremacist attitudes, okay? And Nazis are very good at using that fear and that lack of community that people have, and offer the validation that these people are desperately seeking, that like they aren't wrong for believing the same things that their fucking grandparents believed in, okay? And then it's the left that's wrong. It's really difficult to change your mind, but rehabilitation is always possible. That is why I am very aggressive towards people in my own community as well that immediately fucking say, nope, people can't change, that act like you are incapable of changing, or try to punish people aggressively while they're on that journey of changing and becoming better. It's a deeply frustrating attitude that is so self-defeating, and Nazis never fucking do that, okay? As a former right-wing reactionary, it's sad that these people are still being exploited into committing these acts. I mean, look, dude, there are plenty of people who probably could have gone down, maybe not to that same level, but gone down that pipeline, that were in that pipeline, their alt-right radicalization pipeline, that were able to fucking better themselves by working on themselves, by finding, healthier interests for themselves, by not letting them, not letting that darkness take over their entire lives, okay? And then there are still people who are hate watching every day that probably go to the exact same fucking forums that this dude was in, whether it be Kiwi Farms or subreddits or 4chan or whatever the fuck. And I'm here to tell you, listen, dude, I know you probably think I'm a fucking piece of shit. I know you probably have been blinded by so much hatred from all of the other people that you trust are in your circles about how much of a bad guy I am, but you can fucking get better. I promise you can change. Everyone can change. It just starts with wanting to do so. But you got to pull yourself out of that fucking dark circle on the internet that constantly reinforces and gives you a sense of like shared purpose too, but constantly reinforces your worst opinions. Those places are terrible for your brain. And I know it's really hard to look away from that because like there is something that's like, that gives you a little bit of sense of purpose and a sense of community and happiness when you engage in that collective, like, oh lol, this guy fucking sucks, or like, let's look at this guy, he's a new lol cow, you know what I mean? And it makes you feel a little bit better, but it's not. It's like, it's toxic as fuck. It's like me with cookies, okay? I know I'm gonna have that one cookie, I'm not gonna be able to stop. It's like fucking crack. Former veteran who was right-wing years later and tried talking to friends and watching things, ultimately realizing I'm a leftist, and I'm happy that you're saying the things you are. I wish the best for everyone. Happy to see you succeed. Yeah, there are communities on the internet like this one, where we understand that like change is a possibility, okay? Plenty of people in my circles, plenty of people that I know have changed their attitudes. Plenty of people in this community have changed their attitudes and are no longer reactionary. You can do that as well. You can do that for yourself as well. It just comes from self-improvement though. You certainly have to work on yourself. And the first step is just immediately shutting off that area that you believe is a support system for you, but it's not. It's only pushing you further and further into anger and resentment for people who are just as powerless, if not less powerful than you are, okay? Not the fucking trans people that are ruining American society or Western civilization in the way that people try to make you believe. It's those at the fucking top who control everything. It's the wealthy, it's the corporations, it's the bourgeois capitalist governance that we exist under. It is the capitalist mode of production that we exist under that undermines all of your needs and reduces you to a simple cog in the fucking machine, serving your masters in the most servile way you can at the behest of improving profit margins for corporations where the only winners at the top are faceless, lifeless shareholders that will never step foot in the retail store that you work at. They'll never step foot at the restaurant that you work at. That will never actually get in your Uber that you're driving. That will never actually ever pick up a delivery package that you're delivering. Those guys are just simply exploiting your labor. And all of our society is designed to make you feel like that's normal. And everyone on at some level of like political commentary through our propaganda machines are telling you, don't focus on that. No matter what you do, don't focus on that. Focus on abortion rights, a subject that fucking 70% of the country agrees on. Don't focus on that. Focus on gun rights, okay? A subject that 90% of the country agrees on, at least when it comes to like certain levels of protection. Universal background checks, for example. Don't focus on that. Focus on, racism and how black people are trying to kill you or some shit. Whatever the fuck the Republicans are pushing for in lighter terms, usually. Yeah, another thing, I think they're mostly focused on queer teachers. Yeah, focus on, yeah, exactly. Queer teachers are grooming your children into being gay, like that, as though that's how it works.